Welcome to the deep dive. If you're tuning in today, I already know a little something about you.
You're a learner.
Exactly. You are a learner. You're the kind of person who's constantly asking questions, always looking for that next great perspective shift. And you want to get there without drowning in a sea of disconnected, dry facts.
Right. Nobody wants that.
No. You're here for those pure light bulb aha moments that actually change the way you see your everyday life. And today is all about refining how we look at the physical world.
Pushing past the obvious infrastructure.
Yes, reading the deeper societal blueprints hiding in plain sight. We are pulling from an incredible framework today. We're looking at AP Human Geography, Topic 3.2, specifically covering the global cultural landscape, and something called the human mark.
It is such a brilliant lens to look through. I mean, for a lot of people, geography is just the memorization of maps.
Borders, capital cities, that kind of thing.
Right. But true human geography turns that entirely on its head. It becomes a study of human behavior, economics, and history, all written right into the dirt and the concrete.
We aren't just looking at maps today. We are learning how to read the physical environment like a history book. From the way a farm is laid out, to the architecture of your local bank, to the exact language printed on a street sign.
None of it is accidental.
Not at all. It all leaves a specific mark. Okay, let's unpack this.
So to really start reading the landscape, we have to first define what a cultural landscape actually is.
Right.
At its core, it's the intersection of the natural environment and human agency. Imagine a physical landscape. Mountains, a winding river, a dense forest.
Just pure nature.
Exactly. Those are natural features that exist entirely without us. But a cultural landscape emerges the very second humans step in and modify those natural features to suit their needs, and crucially, to reflect their identity.
It's the visible imprint of human activity on the earth.
That is the human mark.
And it starts with the absolute most basic modifications we make to the earth, which is agriculture.
The foundational layer.
Right. To understand what geographers call a sense of place, you just have to look at how different societies grow their food. A sense of place is when an environment feels distinctly and undeniably tied to a specific culture.
It's a feeling of unique identity.
Yeah. Think about the drastic visual difference between the intricate terraced rice fields carved into Asian mountainsides and the endless, flat, geometric grid of an American Midwest cornfield.
That contrast perfectly illustrates the concept. Both are agricultural practices, the most fundamental form of land use, but they look entirely different.
Completely different world.
And they signal completely different cultural identities, technological approaches, and adaptations to the climate. When you see terraced rice fields cut into the side of a steep mountain, you aren't just seeing farming, you're seeing a highly specific societal adaptation.
It takes intense community cooperation.
Generational cooperation.
Yeah.
And incredible hydrological engineering to move water down a mountain step by step. It invokes a very specific regional culture.
Right. If you were dropped out of an airplane and landed in a terraced field, you'd immediately know roughly where in the world you were.
Not a doubt.
You'd feel the history and the community structure that shaped that land. It has a profound sense of place. But then contrast that with the American Midwest.
The human mark there is vast.
Sprawling row crops of corn, driven by massive machinery, individualism, and grid systems designed for maximum yield across flat plains. The geography dictated the culture, and then the culture permanently scarred the geography.
Precisely. Agriculture gives us a deep sense of place. But as we move forward in time and shift through industrial practices, we start seeing the exact opposite effect.
Oh, this is the scary part.
Yeah, if agriculture and early settlements give us a sense of place, modern globalized industry often gives us placelessness.
Placelessness. It's such a haunting word, but it instantly makes sense.
It's a crucial concept. Placelessness happens when environments become completely generic and indistinguishable from one another.
Copy and paste infrastructure.
Exactly. Let's look at two different eras of industrial building. On one hand, you have 19th century Baltimore row houses. These were built specifically to house the industrial workers of that specific era and region.
They use local brick, right?
Yes, local brick, they had identical marble steps, and they created a highly unique regional identity. It fostered a distinct stoop culture. You look at a picture of those brick row houses, and you immediately think,
I in Baltimore.
exactly.
But then compare that highly specific neighborhood to a standard American highway intersection today. You know, the exact intersection I'm talking about.
We all do.
You pull off the interstate, And there is a generic Starbucks on one corner, a standardized gas station on the other, maybe a fast food drive-through with the exact same plastic signage you'd see 3,000 miles away.
If you were dropped blindfolded at that intersection and took the blindfold off, you would have absolutely no idea what state, what time zone, or even what region you were in.
It could be anywhere.
That is the definition of placelessness. It's the homogenization of the landscape, where distinct cultural identity is wiped out and replaced by generic, highly efficient economic infrastructure.
Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate for just a second here.
Go for it.
I get the loss of local culture, and nobody wants their hometown to look like a copy-paste job. But isn't there a flip side to placelessness? When I am driving cross-country at 2 a.m. and I'm exhausted, there is a weird, undeniable comfort in knowing exactly what I'm going to get at that generic highway exit.
The reliability.
Yeah, predictability has its own value, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And that is exactly why placelessness spreads. It's driven by consumer demand for reliability, safety, and frictionless commerce. The corporation wants efficiency, and the consumer wants predictability.
You know the coffee will taste the exact same in Ohio as it does in Oregon.
Right. But human geographers simply point out the trade-off. In exchange for that psychological comfort and economic efficiency, we sacrifice the unique visual and cultural identity of our physical space.
It's a fascinating trade-off. I want you to picture your own morning commute right now. Think about the drive, the walk, or the train ride.
Look at the storefronts and the streets.
How much of what you see along the way gives you a unique sense of place? And how much of it is just pure, optimized placelessness? It completely changes how you view your daily routine.
It really does. And one of the most visible ways to categorize that world, to see the battle between a sense of place and placelessness, is through the buildings we construct.
Architecture.
Architecture is a primary indicator of cultural values. It is not just about putting a roof over our heads to keep the rain out. It's a cultural blueprint.
The evolution of those blueprints is wild when you lay it out on a timeline. Let's start with traditional architecture.
Which relies heavily on the local environment.
Almost entirely. The defining characteristic of traditional architecture is that it uses local materials to solve highly specific environmental needs. The classic example is adobe architecture in the American Southwest.
A perfect example.
I actually took a road trip through New Mexico a few years ago, and it really clicked for me. You are in the desert. The heat during the day is absolutely blistering. But the second the sun goes down, the temperature plummets, and it is freezing.
Right, and long before the invention of modern HVAC systems, societies had to regulate those extreme temperature swings using only what the physical landscape provided.
Earth and water.
Earth, water, and organic materials like straw. That specific mixture is fantastic at thermal mass. It absorbs the blistering heat during the day, which keeps the inside cool, and then slowly radiates that trapped heat out into the home during the freezing night.
It's an elegant technique passed down through generations. The building itself is a direct reflection of the natural environment.
But then society industrializes, and we move into modernist architecture.
And the philosophy completely flips. Modernist architecture prioritizes function over form. It's characterized by straight lines, steel, massive glass windows, and zero ornamentation.
It is all about sheer efficiency.
Yes, modernism strips away the regional, traditional, cultural flair in favor of universal utility.
A modernist glass skyscraper in New York looks essentially identical to a modernist glass skyscraper in Tokyo or London. It reflects the mid-20th century era of industrialization, where the goal was practical, mass-produced, highly rational space.
It was necessary post-war, but it heavily contributed to that feeling of placelessness.
Exactly.
Because humans don't naturally want to live inside a sterile filing cabinet. We crave identity.
Yeah.
Which brings us to postmodern architecture, which emerged in the 1960s and 70s as a direct, almost aggressive pushback against the coldness of modernism.
What's fascinating here is how postmodernism attempts to bring cultural expression and playfulness back into the landscape.
It rejects that strict function over form rule.
It rejects it and instead emphasizes both form and function. It argues that a building can be an efficient, practical space, but it should also visually express the values, the history, and the identity of the society building it. It reintroduces curves, unusual materials, and historical references.
The ultimate example of this is the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, Spain, designed by Frank Gehry. If you haven't seen a picture of this building, imagine sweeping, chaotic, curving waves of shimmering titanium.
It's breathtaking.
It catches the light differently at every hour of the day. It does not look like a functional building. It looks like a ship sailing down the river, which is a direct nod to Bilbao's history as an industrial port town.
We can't talk about Bilbao without mentioning the Bilbao effect.
Oh, right.
That single piece of postmodern architecture didn't just provide a space for art. It acted as a catalyst that economically and culturally revitalized an entire struggling industrial city.
It became a global tourist destination simply because the building itself was so unique.
It put the sense of place back into the urban landscape with such force that it transformed the local economy.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Looking at architecture like the museum in Bilbao or a row house in Baltimore leads geographers to a much broader, somewhat heavier realization.
That landscapes are not neutral.
Exactly. The built environment isn't just an accident of construction schedules and zoning laws. It is a very intentional reflection of social hierarchies, wealth distribution, and cultural priorities.
Absolutely. People and societies actively claim space, and they do it in distinct, sometimes aggressive ways. Religion and language are two of the most powerful tools for this.
How so?
Well, religious features interact with the physical environment to carve out sacred spaces from the secular world. Take a site like Angkor Wat in Cambodia.
Angkor Wat is this massive, sprawling temple complex, but it's not just the stone towers that matter. It's surrounded by an enormous, mathematically precise moat.
And that water isn't just there for landscaping or defense.
No, it acts as a symbolic sacred barrier. It represents the cosmic ocean in Hindu mythology. It is a profound human mark that physically separates the holy, spiritual space from the ordinary, everyday world. It declares the spiritual priorities of the society right into the earth.
And language claims space just as loudly, though often in more modern urban settings. Think about bilingual signage in a place like New York City's Chinatown.
You're walking down a standard New York grid, and suddenly the typography, the neon, the language on the awnings and street signs changes to Chinese and English.
That signage is doing heavy lifting.
It's not just about translating a menu. When a diaspora community puts up those signs, they are planting a flag. They are announcing the identity of the inhabitants. Ethnic clusters often form due to external cultural pressures, and those signs serve as a protective envelope.
A way to preserve traditions, language, and community.
Yes, against a massive dominant culture that surrounds them. The signs are a physical marker of self-preservation.
That concept of the landscape reflecting societal structures extends beyond ethnicity and religion, too. We can also see how societal attitudes about gender actively modify the physical environment.
This is a really observant contrast from the source text.
By analyzing spatial phenomena literally where things are placed, geographers can read a visual record of gender dynamics.
If you look at more traditional societies, for example, certain regions in India, you might find explicitly gender-segregated spaces.
You will see public parks that are designated specifically for men, or separate areas enclosed only for women.
The physical space, the fences, and the benches are divided based on traditional cultural norms regarding gender separation.
And if we contrast that with Western societies, we see a different but equally revealing spatial phenomena: the specific location of childcare centers.
In recent decades, there has been a massive rise in childcare centers located within or immediately adjacent to modern corporate office parks and skyscrapers.
Right, you have a sleek glass corporate headquarters, and right on the ground floor is a brightly colored daycare.
Exactly. And to a geographer, that spatial proximity tells a complex story. On one hand, it reflects a major economic and social shift: the large-scale movement of women into the corporate workforce over the last half-century.
The infrastructure actually had to adapt to support working parents.
However, the phenomenon simultaneously highlights a lingering societal dynamic. The fact that childcare must be physically attached to the workplace visually maps out the ongoing reality that women are still predominantly viewed and often operate as the primary caretakers.
The landscape adapted to the economic shift, but the physical blueprint still reflects those underlying societal expectations.
It's just incredible. The landscape literally maps out who we are, what we value, and the transitions we are currently struggling through. And speaking of history mapped out, we have to talk about the geographic distribution of indigenous lands and reservations in the United States.
Yes, the presence and the exact borders of indigenous lands are another profound example of a non-neutral landscape. The spatial distribution of reservations across the map of North America is a direct physical manifestation of historical power dynamics.
It reflects a multi-century history of conflict, treaty negotiations, and the forced removal of indigenous peoples.
And it's not just that the borders exist, it's where they were drawn. Historically, many of these reservations were established on marginal lands, areas that were less arable or further from major water transit routes of the era.
So when you look at a modern map, you aren't just looking at zoning, you are looking at the direct, visible imprint of historical attitudes and systemic discrimination. Geography is quite literally history made visible.
Which leads us perfectly to one of the most elegant concepts in human geography, a term that explains how all this history stacks up over time: sequent occupancy.
Sequent occupancy. I absolutely love this concept. It's the ultimate layer cake of history.
It really is. Sequent occupancy is the theory of layering cultures. It suggests that successive societies leave their cultural imprints on a place, and each one contributes to the cumulative cultural landscape,
Past generations leave architectural and cultural marks that remain visible.
even as entirely new groups take over the space and add their own modifications.
We see this in modern cities all the time with gentrification. Think about that trendy neighborhood in your city. You have a massive, heavy brick building. 100 years ago, it was a booming industrial textile factory.
That's layer one.
Then the industry collapses, the building is abandoned, and artists move in because it's cheap. It becomes a punk rock venue or underground studios.
Layer two.
Today, a developer buys it, keeps the exposed brick and the industrial windows, but turns the ground floor into a place selling $7 artisanal lattes and the top floors into luxury lofts.
Layer three.
The ghosts of the past are still visually baked into the architecture, even though the current culture is entirely different.
That is a perfect modern example. But the ultimate historical case study for sequent occupancy on a grand imperial scale is the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul.
Oh, this is fascinating.
If you want to see the layering of entire civilizations, you just have to look at the timeline of this one single structure.
It's mind-blowing. Let's walk through the timeline. It starts all the way back in the 6th century. It is built as a massive, sweeping Eastern Orthodox Christian church by the Byzantine Empire.
It has this colossal dome and Christian mosaics.
That is layer one.
Then we move forward to the year 1453. The Ottoman Empire conquers the region. They take this breathtaking Christian church and convert it into an Islamic mosque.
But they don't tear it down.
No, they add their own human mark to the existing structure. They construct 4 towering minarets around the exterior and add massive Islamic calligraphic medallions inside. So now you have Byzantine Christian architecture physically fused with Islamic Ottoman architecture.
That is layer two.
Then jump to 1935.
Here.
A massive societal shift happens. The Ottoman Empire is gone, and a new secular Turkish government is in power under Ataturk.
They take the building and convert it into a museum. It's no longer an active place of worship for anyone. It is a neutralized historical monument.
They even uncover some of the old Christian mosaics that had been plastered over.
That's layer three. And then finally, just recently in 2020, the societal pendulum swings again, and the building is reconverted back into a functioning mosque.
Layer 4. What's fascinating here is we connect this to the bigger picture. The Hagia Sophia is an absolute masterclass in reading a cultural landscape.
Yeah, it really is.
Think about the efficiency of this for a geographer. This single composite building allows you to track the complex religious, political, and cultural history of the crossroads of Europe and Asia simply by looking at its architecture.
You don't need a textbook to know that multiple empires with contracting religions and varying degrees of secularism controlled that land.
You just need to look at the walls. The Christian dome, the Islamic minarets, the museum turnstiles, they're all standing right there, stacked on top of each other in a single footprint.
So what does this all mean? When we take all these pieces we've discussed today, the intense community engineering of terraced rice fields, the predictable comfort of generic gas stations, the protective envelope of bilingual street signs, the childcare centers built into corporate glass towers, and the towering layered minarets of the Hagia Sophia,
We see a core, ongoing tension.
we are witnessing the continuous battle between traditional, highly unique cultural spaces and the flattening, homogenizing effects of global industrialization. It is the eternal fight between a true sense of place and sweeping placelessness.
It is a constant dynamic interaction. Humans shape the physical environment to meet our needs, and then that built environment, in turn, shapes our behavior and reflects our changing values right back at us.
I want to challenge you to do something specific today. When you step outside or when you commute to work tomorrow, don't just passively look at your surroundings. I want you to really read them.
Look at the zoning. Look at the languages printed on the corner store awnings.
Notice the materials the buildings are made of. Is it local stone or mass-produced glass? Try to spot the layers of sequent occupancy in your own town. Where is the unique human mark thriving, and where is it slowly being erased?
This raises an important question, one that really builds on everything we've explored today about placelessness and layering. Think about the layer of the built environment that we as a modern global society are constructing right now.
Our layer.
When the next layer of sequent occupancy happens, maybe 2 or 3 centuries from now, what will future geographers deduce from the architectural layer we leave behind? Will they uncover a rich, highly unique cultural identity in the ruins of our cities? Or will they simply find the globalized, generic remnants of 1,000 identical coffee shops, strip malls, and gas stations?
That is the perfect, somewhat chilling thought to leave you with. What does your neighborhood's human mark truly say about who we are in our current era? Thank you for going on this deep dive with us today. Keep looking closely at the world around you, keep asking the big questions, and we will see you next time.